thank everyone for joining. We're going to kind of get started on it and then other people can join. Obviously, this is being recorded, so you can watch it from the beginning if you feel like you've missed out. But thank you so much for joining this masterclass, everybody. So this is the practical tips on personal positioning, and I'm joined with Paul, who has been a part of like the pollen family for a bit now, been a bit of a supporter of us. So it's really nice
Yeah,
to actually do something with you, and you're actually on our mentor directory as well. So I'm
yeah,
sure we'll put that out after this as well, and people can kind of reach out to you. But if you don't mind, if you could just give a bit of a like overview of who you are, what you've done, so people can get to know you a bit more.
yeah. Well, my name's Paul Robinson. I worked in media and advertising for almost 30 years. Finished about 4 years ago and sort of flirted with retirement and then discovered that that wasn't for me. So I'm doing a few things, and one of them is supporting the pollen community and the business actually. Um, uh, Simply because I think it's a fantastic mission and it's a vital one because the whole recruitment, the approach to recruitment is flawed in so many ways. So yeah, it's pollen is something that's very dear to my heart, and it's been very satisfying on a few occasions helping young people get into sort of entry level roles, because it's definitely more difficult than when I were a lad, many years ago. So yeah, I think there's a lot more challenges. There's loads of different opportunities out there. There's loads of information, but there's the processes themselves can be quite challenging. Yeah, the more we can do to help that, the better, really.
Yeah. It's crazy how much it's changed though, because I always have these conversations with all like
Mm,
people at all different stages of their like
mm.
lives, and it's like people applying for jobs now, like an AI interview with a robot and doing all of this,
Yes,
that's completely
it's crazy.
normal. That's like
Yes,
nobody, and when I tell other people, they're like, you're speaking to a robot, and I'm like, yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, my daughter's 26, and she's going through this process at the moment herself. So I've spent a bit of time studying and things, but yeah, she's done interviews where she's had to record to a robotic thing asking questions, and it's just seems a bit strange to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is, and just have to figure out how we make it work best.
We're
But
on a
people,
mission to change it, but we can't do
yeah,
every single company at
no,
once. So
exactly.
you do have to adapt to it. Not
One
everybody.
step at a time.
Yeah, we would
Yeah,
love to have millions of jobs for pollen, but everybody ditches the
yeah,
CV. But we do have other systems that you have to get used to as well.
exactly.
But yeah, thank you for telling us a bit more about yourself. If
Hmm.
any of you don't know me already, obviously I work for Pollen. I might have interviewed some of you before. I might have had feedback calls with some of you before. I've worked at Pollen for 2 years now. I started off in marketing. I actually did a degree in media, so I kind of joined this thinking, oh, I want to go on Instagram, I want to go to TikTok. And then we had a period of time where the founder wasn't well, and she said, we've got a meeting with the CEO of this company. Can you jump on that call on your own? And I was like, wow, okay, I'll give it a go. And then I launched that job, and since then I've just been attached with the whole job process and helping employees find young people, but also supporting young people and finding jobs. Because like there's so many calls that I've had where you're like bringing people and they're like, you don't know how much this means to me, and it's a lovely job to have, and hopefully the pollen process is enjoyable for anybody, no matter what the outcome is. So we thought we'd have a little kind of almost like podcasty style chat about personal positioning and how you can almost bring yourself to light a bit more when talking to an employer, because I know how hard it is kind of leaving education and thinking, especially for me, I was in uni during like kind of COVID times. We didn't really have like intense internships or anything like that. So you're thinking, what do I actually have in order to tell an employer to demonstrate that I have the skills? Because we know full well that we all have the skills to do a lot of entry level jobs, but they still have that annoying 3 to 5 years of experience
Hmm.
necessary.
Hmm.
So I guess, Paul, what kind of interested you in coming up with, I guess, this kind of part of your life where you're talking to people,
Mm.
working on their like personal positioning and like
Mm.
helping people with the framework?
Yeah, yeah. So, and it came about really. The framework itself is something I nicked off someone else, to be honest with you. And initially, it was a framework that was a single page thing that we used for businesses actually. So around sort of the visions, and we'll sort of talk about sort of some of the elements, but the visions, the ambitions of a business, the sort of the succinct way of describing it, the positioning statement, if you like, and then, some of the evidence to back that up, the reasons to believe, the specific, features and benefits in the case of a business. And I use this framework with businesses that I was advising, but I got more and more questions from people, and actually people at all stages of their careers too. So I'm mentoring people that are sort of mid career. There's people that are sort of similar age to me who are looking for new roles that I'm helping, and then obviously there's younger people at the entry level who some come straight out of school, 18, 19. Some obviously have done university courses and so on. So the more I sort of spoke to people, the more I realised actually that this framework would be really helpful on a personal level, because actually the same principles apply. And I was reflecting, Holly. Actually, I was walking the dog this morning before having this call. I think there's an important distinction to make here between the thing that I'm talking about, which is your personal positioning framework, which is actually, and we'll go on to discuss it. A lot of it is the value is in the process of actually creating it, and the thinking, and there's a bit of an introspective thing you have to do. Um, but it helps clarify in people's own minds exactly what it is that they're about and how they want to talk about themselves. Specifically, in this case, when we're talking about applying for roles, and that's more often not what it's about. There's a different thing which people talk about, which I'm not going to go into, which is around personal branding. And to be honest with you, I was always a little bit um, skeptical about some of that, because a lot of that is about how you show up on social media and promote yourself. And it's a bit like advertising yourself, and that isn't really what this is about. This is a lot more, I suppose, pragmatic, and I think sometimes personal branding can be a little bit superficial, frankly, because it's what you want to show as opposed to the things that the substance behind it. And that's what the framework is designed to do. It's to give opportunity for people to have a think about what it is that you want to achieve, what your ambitions are, the things that are important to you, how you work, your values, how you want to talk about yourself, and then some proof points that you can then share. So that's how the framework came about. And to everyone on the call, it's something we'll share afterwards. It's not top secret. It's not particularly pretty. It's a spreadsheet, but it works actually. And the overwhelming feedback that I get from people who go through the process of filling it in is that first and foremost, it gives people a chance to reflect on what it is that they want to, or look forward to what it is they want to achieve, and the ambitions that they have, and reflect on what motivates them. It also gives people an opportunity to think back and reflect upon, and this is equally true whether you've been in work for 30 years or you're just coming into into employment, or into that sphere and starting your career, is you've got achievements you've already made. So if you've got through school and university, there's going to be skills that you have, and there'll be proof points that you can point to, um, that demonstrate just how much you've already achieved. And I think that's really important, because that was the second bit of feedback that I regularly get, which is actually just doing it gives people a real sense of, actually, yeah, there are things that I'm really good at. I do have some skills which I know I'm good at, and I can prove that I've used them effectively in the past, in whatever shape or form that is. And then finally, there's a practical. The third one is the sort of the very practical thing, which is you've got it in a few succinct words, and that's one of the things we'll touch upon when we look at the framework itself. You can't use that many words, but um, what you've got is little bits of copy that you can cut and paste, lift and drop, for when you're writing emails to prospective employers, or if you're commenting and you want to just on something on, say, LinkedIn, and you want to say a little bit about yourself, you've got a sentence or two which sums you up. There's things like that which are quite practical. So yeah, so it's a chance to look forward and sort of clarify ambitions, to reflect on what you've already achieved, and then you've got a very practical little set of words, hopefully, which sum yourself up.
I think personal branding as well is so interesting because I think at the
Mm.
moment what we're seeing is just a lack of authenticity, my list, lack of being authentic and being
Yes,
yourself.
yeah.
We're seeing a lot of posts that are written kind of by AI, and they're
Yes. Yeah.
very similar, or we're
Mm.
looking at applications and we're like, just bring a bit of your personality in here, and we want
Yes.
to see
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
as a person, not like they're
Yeah.
talking in such a formal language that's like you wouldn't even
Mm.
talk to the person you're having an interview with in that way.
Yeah.
You need to kind of bring this personality forward. Like
Exactly.
when we're looking at applications, we love it when somebody talks about themselves, when
Yes.
really it's just such like a continuous thing about the company and skills. And it's like, yeah, that's great to
Yeah.
know, but like, why do you actually want to work here? Like, we know
Yeah.
why you want to work in this field, but what makes you a good
Mm.
fit for the team? Because what I've seen from talking to
Yeah.
a lot of employers is you're getting so many CVs or applications with people with very similar skill sets. So what makes them a good fit for the team?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
normally is your kind of personality or what you kind of bring from different aspects. Like we've all done group projects, we've all had like different scenarios. I always like to say that I'm the eldest daughter, so I feel like I'm very organized in managing my dad. I'm reminding him it's my mum's birthday. So I feel
Yes.
that's a skill that I can transfer. But I think what a lot of people, I guess, struggle with is like finding that. So I guess what do you think is like the main blocker for people going, I don't actually know what skills I have and I don't know how to find it? Do you think it's like a lack of
Mm.
confidence?
Well, I think there's, yeah, quite possibly. You're quite possibly right, Holly. I think there's also, you mentioned it actually, the transferability of skills.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's not always immediately apparent. You have to give a bit of thought to the things that you're good at and perhaps you've done in the past, which, the reality of it is quite often you're going to go for a job where, you don't have any direct experience in exactly what they're asking you to do, but you've done probably lots of things where you've used skills that will be required in that role, but in different settings, in different formats, in different ways. So, yeah, and I think that the key thing, and one of the things that the framework does, and I've made it very clear, is you want to identify your three or four best or most important skills. So quite often when I've seen job descriptions in the past when there's a list of about 30 different aspects of, what are we looking for in this role? Someone's got to be collaborative, attention to detail, good communication skills, numerate, great community. And there's a list of 20, 30 different things, right? So um, a lot of them are repetitive and so on, but it's really important that you have succinctness and clarity in what it is that you present yourself as. So to your point, if you organise your dad's birthday cards for the family and stuff, and you're the eldest sister, and you probably do run the household in some ways, um, just making sure that people are doing the right things. That's an
Mm.
organisation skill. So that you've mentioned something very personal and very human, but it's the ability to organise and be on top of things and just keeping on things is a skill set. So that's probably one of your, and I know for a fact, Holly, that's one of your um, foremost skills.
Yeah.
So yeah, the point is it's good to identify, give it a bit of thought, and I think the important thing is to think about the skills that you are genuinely really you feel really are your not the ones you think people might want to hear,
Mhm.
but the ones that you genuinely can point to and go, I think, yeah, I'm really good at this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Um, because generally speaking, if you're good at certain things,
Mhm.
you'll enjoy them more because you perform better and do a better job, and yeah, everyone's happier because you do those things well. If you are trying to sort of list off three or four of your key skills and you're starting to point to things that perhaps aren't naturally in your um, natural skill sets for you, then you'll end up leading yourself down the wrong path, and that can make you a bit unhappy and could lead you into wrong sorts of roles where you find yourself not using the things that you're good at and therefore probably enjoy. So yeah, I think that's to give it some thought and have some real clarity in terms of what are the things, what are the three or four skills that you can bring
Yeah.
um, that you genuinely feel from inside yourself. These are the things that I'm really good at, and
Yeah.
then that will, in some ways, also start to shape the sort of jobs that you'll go for.
Mm.
Um, I think like I say, there's a general laziness in quite a lot of the um, advertising for roles when they do list off 30 different things that you're supposed to be good at. It's like, of course,
It's not
everyone's going to say,
actually like what you need for a lot of them. It's really funny
no,
because we'll see a job spec and then the employer will come to us and they say, "Oh, we're struggling to find somebody for the role." And I'm like, "Send me over the job spec."
mm,
And then we talk to
yeah,
them about the role and I'm like, "You haven't mentioned a single thing that's on that job
yes,
spec." Um,
yeah,
and what really they're looking for is a completely different skill set,
yeah,
somebody with like willingness to learn. So they're not
yeah,
expected to come forward with any of
yeah,
this. One thing I can also say, which is really important, is like when you leave education, always like work on like continuous development and
mm,
try different things.
yeah,
Because for me, I left education with such like a set, this is what I want to do. And it wasn't until I joined the crazy world of a startup where you're made to do 100 different things
yeah,
that I knew that I had skills that I never
yeah,
expected I would have. And I always think it's crazy, especially with like other generations, how many people have been in the same job for like 30 years in a
mm,
skill set that doesn't even suit them?
yes, yeah. Well, that's yeah, that's, it happens, unfortunately,
Yeah,
and that's what you want to try and avoid.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think this, and that's one of the things that I really like about the process that you go through um, as a person coming to join the pollen community. It's obviously everyone who joins does this assessment, and that's really useful information. And I encourage everyone in the community, one or two people that I've mentored, get the results of those assessments through, um, because it will give you some indication of the things that your natural sort of areas of, some people are very good at talking and being face to face with people and great in their sales, right? Other people are much more analytical and would
yeah,
much rather spend their time looking at data or assessing patterns in data or doing some administrative work. That it's important to help. It's what use your own sort of intuition as well, but also if you've done an assessment through pollen, have a look at the results of that. Hopefully they will align with the nature of you as a person, because that's the aim.
yeah,
Um, then it's like I say, it's about picking the three or four that are the most important and the most that you think you're very, very best at.
yeah,
So for yourself, it's about organizational skills. There's a high degree of adaptability that you've mentioned as well, which enables you to do jobs with multifaceted sort of challenges in a startup. Um, so
yeah,
yeah, so that those are the sorts of things that you have to give it a bit of thought.
yeah,
And I think that's the thing about the framework. As I said, it's a fairly rudimentary little spreadsheet. There's some guidance on how to look at it. Um, but it's actually the process that you go through.
yeah.
Um, it's a lot more difficult actually doing
It,
it
it
than
doesn't have to be pretty to be
no,
powerful. Um,
no. You've had a go. You've had a look at it, haven't you? And I
Yeah,
think
I've had a look at it. I went through it. I feel like there's a lot of things that you kind of it gives you the space and the time to actually sit back and think,
yeah,
okay, how can I apply myself? And another thing as well that I would probably recommend is I would have loved to do that before I worked at Pollen and now because
yeah,
it's probably completely different and you don't realize
probably.
how many things you learn over time.
Yeah.
Another thing that I saw as well that I was speaking to somebody the other day, she got her scores from Pollen, like her results, and she put
Mm,
it into ChatGPT and said what jobs would suit me.
mm,
And
yeah,
like that's a perfect way of doing it because there's
yeah,
things that you might not have even known about. I've learned about so
yeah,
many different jobs. I did a media degree and I
yeah.
didn't even know about like Sophie was telling me about her career in media and I was like, I didn't even know that was a job.
I know. Yeah.
So I
Well,
was
that's half the problem, isn't it, with the industries? Some of them and this is why they should be partnering more with Pollen.
like, yeah.
Is that a lot of the talent that is out there
Hmm.
just isn't aware that these roles exist,
Hmm.
and yet there's, as we know, there's this huge amount of talent across the UK,
Yeah.
all wanting to get into roles and careers and use their, maybe directly or indirectly use their qualifications and their education to 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 apply themselves in particular roles, but just don't know about a
Yeah.
lot of the jobs that are out there. And that's on the employers. That's down to them to make sure that they tap into that talent, because there's no shortage of talent. Um,
There's,
And yet sometimes I hear recruit employers sort of saying, "Oh, where do we find good people?" I'm like, there are literally hundreds of thousands of smart young people looking for work, um, who would be brilliant, in all sorts of different roles. So yeah, I mean, there's that sort of logistical side of the recruitment process which needs to be fixed. And I think, as I say, this in a small way, just doing things like this position and helping through mentoring is it's hopefully opens people's eyes. I think that's a great idea actually. Once you've done the framework and you've got sort of like your key values, or you say your three or four key sort of skill sets and so on. If you can use the technology through ChatGPT or whatever AI platform you want to use, Overview or whatever,
there's
then
a new one every day.
Gemini, then yeah, chuck
Yeah,
it in, see what comes out.
yeah.
Maybe do a bit of research on the sorts of businesses that you're seeing. Have a look at their websites and so on. Yeah, and as hard as it is, if you go through that route, there may be businesses out there that aren't actually actively advertising for roles. You're not necessarily responding to something, but there's no reason why, if you identify 30 or 40, what you would say are your bullseye employers, where you think those are just absolutely, there would be roles at those businesses that I know that I would absolutely nail and would love to work in. And there is something to be said in just contacting them and using some of the stuff that you've got. Once you're getting in contact, you need to give them a really succinct, clear view on what it is and why you're interested and what it is that you bring.
Yeah.
That's hopefully
People
what the
very
framework.
rarely get messages like that. And even
No,
working at Pollen and the resources we have and the connections
yeah,
we have to different employers,
yeah,
I rarely get a message from anybody personally. I have friends
yeah,
that are looking for jobs, and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm literally your friend, and I can help you apply for this job.
yes,
And
yeah,
they still don't ask me or anything
yeah,
like that. So I think
yeah,
I know it takes a bit of confidence to be able to put yourself in a position, but what
yeah,
I kind of see it as is like, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's the worst they're
yeah,
going to say is no. And
yeah,
I've even like working at Pollen, I've never reached out to somebody on LinkedIn and got a like
mm,
no. It's always
no,
been a like, thank you so much. Like, I'm busy, but
yeah,
here's another great resource.
yes, yeah,
Never been, I've
absolutely,
never had someone rude.
yeah. And I think I think you'd have to be a pretty soulless person if you're being contact, particularly for someone, someone who's, younger people who are coming into industry and coming into careers and looking to take their first step in the roles. If you're, you know there's so many stories from years ago with people that have just written to, employers of all sorts, whether it be newspapers or TV stations or whatever, just explaining what they're about. Bizarrely, they'll have got a different sort of job and then eventually ended up working in an industry um, which is right for them. But there is, I suppose the challenge is there is so much out there in terms of, you could spend, and I expect lots of people do spend an enormous amount of time just applying for roles, and it's, in these days, day and age as well, it's quite often there's quite a laborious, time consuming process. There's probably things that have to be filled in and so on, online forms and so on. So you can invest an enormous amount of time just applying for roles. Um, you can just focus just solely on responding to, you know, um, employers looking and, advertising for roles, or you can mix in some proactive stuff, which is just to contact people directly.
Mhm.
Um, but you can't do, you can't do hundreds of those. They have to be quite tailored.
Yeah.
So, like you say, if you go through the process of figuring out exactly what it is that you're about, your ambitions, and looking at, and we'll walk through in a second, obviously, when we talk about the framework in a little bit more detail. But actually, like you say, if you then identify your three or four key skills, and you go, okay, right, if I put those into AI, what does it spit out? Oh, okay, right, these sorts of businesses. Well, okay, I'm going to have a look. The top 30 for me are going to be these 30. I'm going to contact, and I'll get the details of their head of people or whatever it may be, and just send them a LinkedIn message with a short bit about me and so on.
Yeah. And how much more
There you go.
like tailored is that rather than just quick applying to loads of random people on LinkedIn?
Yeah, no, exactly. And this is you've each one's got to feel reasonably personal without being overly familiar. um, uh, because that can be a bit off-putting. You know what it's like, you get from LinkedIn and it's someone you've never spoken to before, and they say, "Hey, we haven't spoken for a while." I think there's a good reason for that. It's because I've never
Yeah.
spoken to you before in my life.
But you're
So
like,
just
well,
beware of that bear trap. But
yeah.
so yeah, but there's you know, you don't want you want to make sure that you're explaining why it is that you're getting in contact and why the business that they work for is appealing. And
Mhm.
then, like I say, if you've got a few, and this is why the framework's useful, because you don't have to write it from fresh every time. You can literally just copy and paste. You know, this is me. These are the sort of my main skills. These are the areas I'm interested in. Yeah, and then it becomes, you know, you don't have to send a CV. You can mention whatever qualifications you've got if you want to, but just keep it down to, you know, 3 or 4 paragraphs at most, relatively short paragraphs of 2 or 3 sentences, just as a message. Um, and you know that human appeal quite often will, you know, people do want to help. Most people do.
Yeah.
Um, so it's worth trying. It's worth trying,
Yeah. I think
as well as obviously applying for roles.
yeah. I think the main thing that we've kind of discussed and mentioned a lot is just about having that tailored, slow kind of approach and be careful with what you're doing.
Mm,
Because when you're
yeah,
firing out like 100, mistakes are going to happen and it's going to affect
yeah,
applications. Or
yeah,
to be honest, we could probably tell sometimes when it's a little bit
yeah,
rushed. But if you're
yeah,
being really like targeted and you're taking your time,
yeah,
like a good example is we've just done a role with Octopus electric vehicles.
yeah.
We had a lot of people throughout the whole application go Octopus Energy. And we're
Yeah,
like, but that's a different
that's a different thing. Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
different
just
thing, that's a different company.
yeah,
So
watch out
we're
for that.
talking about the values and the values aren't the same.
Yeah,
It's a different company.
yeah.
It's just taking that bit more time and being a bit
No,
targeted.
exactly.
Find.
I mean, if you did one a day, if you built it into your routine and saved that car and spent 15 minutes sending off one sort of speculative but sort of tailored uh, message to someone who works at a company in a like I say, hopefully in a sort of a people orientated role at a business that you're interested in. If you did one of those a day, you know, you're looking at 30 a month.
Mhm.
Uh, and you, like I say, you can do it probably in 10, 15 minutes. If you've got if you've got a little bit about yourself that you can just drop in, then all you've got to do is write a couple of sentences as to why you're getting in touch. And
Yeah.
that's all you need to do. And look, the reality of it is, you know, most of them will say, thank you very much. It's interesting. We've got nothing at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, but they might ask for you to send more details. They might ask you to get back in touch. You might have made enough of an impression for when they do have a role, they might just drop a line. So it's
You're
worth
on
trying.
their radar. That's the thing. It's just you're getting
Yes.
yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's the same with the mentor directory. Somebody got a job at Chanel through the mentor
Yeah.
directory. So
Yeah.
like these things happen. So sometimes people just love helping people. If you say,
Yes.
I would just love
Yeah.
to chat to you, I love the company, like it's very rare that they would come
Yeah.
and say that they don't have anything that could
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
guide you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we've kind of gone into a really great different tips, but now it's gonna be, I guess, if you want to kind of explain the talent
Yeah.
acquisition framework and what it
Yeah.
does.
So yeah, so it's like I said, it's sort of you can print it out and have it on one page. It's not pretty, and everyone will see that when I share it around. It's just a spreadsheet. Um, but it goes through. I guess we start with things like, you know, what's your vision? So what's your long term goal for the future? What is it that drives you and I'm talking about in the field of work, but it's work related to life. And you know, what's if it's a big, hairy, audacious guy, if your vision is, you know, one day I want to run my own company, or, you know, I want to be you know, a head of HR at a big company, or I want to, you know, um, be a CEO at a major advertiser or something along those lines. You know, you can be whatever you want, but that's your big, hairy, audacious goal. And there's sort of, it's something to, you know, what is it that your long-term ambition you want to get to? Um, One thing I'll say on that is that obviously you can look as far or as forward as you want. It could be, you know, you look 3 or 4 years to the future. You could be 10 years, 15 years to the future. It's nice to have that sort of anchoring as to say, okay, that's what I'm working towards. Um, and, you know, acknowledging that you may not end up in that place. I mean, I certainly didn't. If I look back on the roles I ended up doing, I didn't sort of sit down 10, 15 years beforehand and think, I want to be in those sorts of roles. They just kind of I found my way. But every 3 or 4 years, I would look. I would be moving from one role to another, and I would look. Okay, what do I want to do in the next 3 or 4 years? What is it I want to move to? So you can look at it in any one of those sort of time frames, and then so that's your sort of your I suppose the big hairy audacious goal we call it. So the things you want to achieve. Um,
Love having like a bigger long-term goal though, because I think this is
mm,
what really stood out for me is what I realized is that like
mm,
my big goal wasn't necessarily like job focused. It wasn't I
yeah,
want to be the head of marketing. It was
yeah,
like I want to be in a job that I love working for a purpose.
yeah. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's those increasingly I'm seeing more and more people who go away the less sort of prosaic things, which is okay, I want to be in this sort of role, to being okay, I want to be in a role where I'm working for a purposeful brand or I'm working for a purposeful organization. I want to feel that I've got some autonomy. I want to feel that I'm making a contribution to society. I want that, my vision is to work in a role where it balances the life that I want to lead outside of work with the work that I'm doing. Um, that could be I want to work remotely. I want to be able to work from different parts of the world because I want to spend most of my life traveling. So that it's that there are just there's an infinite number of different ways of looking at it, and some people will have very specific things in terms of going, yeah, this is my vision. I want to be in this sort of role or work at this sort of company, and others will be a um, lot more personal in some ways, but also I think the idea of the nature of the role that you want to be in, rather than the specifics of it, and the nature of the how you want to feel about work. Those are quite important, and those are just as important as in your vision as anything else. So. Yeah, it's really down to you as an individual to decide what it is that you want to focus on. Some people have very specific goals um, in terms of the roles they're after. Other people will go, actually, do you know what? It's less about a specific role. It's more about the way in which work allows me to express myself or live my life.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We'll carry on
mm,
talking, but anybody
mm,
who's still here, I know some people
mm,
like to listen to this while they're doing stuff, but if you're on your
yeah,
computer, please just put your goal in the chat. I just want to see, I want to see what some people's
a
goals
vision.
are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Anybody
yeah.
put your goals in the chat. But yeah, we'll kind of carry on. So after you have
Cool.
your big goal, where do we go
Yeah,
there?
yeah. So and then sort of, I think the other thing that we look at is what's your purpose. So what's your reason for working aside from obviously making money that pays the bills? Because at the end of the day, that's what people that's the pragmatic thing that we have to do is we have to earn some money to pay bills and so on. So again, those reasons for working could be purpose driven. They could be, in the case of say, if I look at how Sophie has set up Pollen, her ambition is to just make the whole recruitment process better. So, that's one aspect. So it could be, the reasons for working could be things about making other people's lives better. It could be supportive of various purposeful causes. It could be actually getting the buzz out of sales. Lots of people get a lot, their purpose for living is to actually to hit the numbers and, hit targets and so on. So again, this is all very, very personal. So there's an infinite number of reasons why people work, but there's, ultimately the purpose and that vision and purpose are sort of two quite closely linked things. And they will connect back actually to what I would call your trademark behaviors. So this was something that I originally learned about from reading a book. 1 second, sorry. I've just got to go and grab the door. Wait a minute.
I can chat
You
anyway.
keep talking.
No, I've seen some lovely goals in the chat. So working somewhere purpose-led, preferably I love that. Supporting communities and to improve quality of life. I love that. What I've seen is a lot of people now are focusing on what they're working towards rather than the job itself, which is such a change that I love and that people are more passionate about it. And who wouldn't love supporting people to improve their quality of life? Working remotely, part-time fit around caring for family, um, autonomy. I love a role where I'm able to just work independently and have that level of trust. Working remotely and being part-time as well to care for your family is so important because I think having that work-life balance and being able to support other people is a great, and it'd be great to have a company. Everybody's putting their goals. I love this.
Oh, brilliant.
Um,
Um,
make social impact, helping people. I want to build something of my own.
there you
Um,
go. Brilliant.
something that fulfills
This
my
is,
passions. Love it.
yeah. I mean, actually, just reading those is just really inspiring, and there's some
Yeah.
fantastic ones, and absolutely, those are the things that are important. So I love that, something that fulfills my passions. Great stuff.
There's such
Um,
a change in what people want from work, and I think
yeah,
it's like it's something that needs to be spoken about more
yeah,
because these are the young people that
yes,
we're
yeah,
getting labeled with such harsh negative stereotypes.
yeah,
Where it's like the reason we didn't want to apply for your role is not because we're lazy, it's not because of anything like this, it's because we want to do something impactful and want to
exactly, yeah,
fulfill
yeah.
our passions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about, we're talking about careers here, so it is really, about, it's more than just earning money. This is around doing things that, yeah, reward you and enrich your lives in so many different ways. So it's fantastic to read some of those or all of those sort of visions and ambitions. The thing I was just before, sorry, I had to jump away for a second, but the there's something that I came across reading a book a while back called The Barcelona Way, and it's about Pep Guardiola and when he first went to Barcelona Football Club, and the process he went through in terms of instilling a culture to that football club because they had loads of superstars at the time and it wasn't working. It was all prima donnas, and he was like, no, 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 we're gonna. These are the way we're gonna work. This is the way we're gonna work. It's all about certain trademark, what he calls trademark behaviours. So, and you always pick just three. And in the case of Pep Guardiola and Barcelona, I think he said to everyone in the club and said, look, there are three key your three trademark behaviours. First of all, is humility. So always be humble. Don't be a big head, smart ass. You work hard and you work for the team, so the teamwork, and you always rank them in the three things in the order with which you think are most important. So first and foremost, as far as he was concerned, is you needed to have humility. You have to be a decent human being that wasn't full of themselves. Um, Challenging with footballers because obviously there's a balance between arrogance and so on. But this is the way he structured it. So I use that trademark behaviours excuse me, in the last few years when I was working with teams, when we were given values by business, I'd turn those into okay, let's have something more tangible rather than values, which kind of sort of just hang around. What are the things that we want people to do? Um, so actually, the last role that I was in, the three values of the business were, innovation, collaboration, and leadership. Which kind of, when you throw them out, there doesn't mean anything. When I spoke to the team, we said, actually, yes, if you make them into three trademark behaviors. So you collaborate first and foremost, because the best way to get the most innovative work is to collaborate. Once you've collaborated, you're in the process of collaborating, you produce innovative work. And once you produce innovative work, then then you can take a leadership position. You can't take a leadership position without the substance to back it up. Um, so yeah, so it's very similar for the as an individual. So I would always say that it's the three behaviours that are ranked and define how it is that you behave. So if people want to chuck those in the chat,
I
if,
love
if
that.
they feel they can, um, uh, yeah. So it's just a nice way of summing out. It's probably quite difficult to do off the hoof like that. So if people want to put it in the chat, great. If they don't, it's fine. So yeah, but so your trademark behaviours and the things that I suppose they sort of reflect your deep motivations and they'll reflect your vision and your purpose as well. And it's just really helpful to have those things because when quite often you see people when they're talking about themselves, they'll use a few words to sort of summarize what it is that defines how they behave within a team or within an organization.
Yeah. I think something that's really interesting as well. I'm not sure what your opinion on this is when
Mm,
I guess people tend to have some like trademark behaviors that they
mm,
assume are quite negative, and then
hmm.
oh, can I actually flip that into something that
Yeah,
could be quite positive? You think, oh no, I
yeah,
can't really say that. I'm just like such a perfectionist. But then
yes,
like, how can I spin that to be more positive?
yes, yeah. No, well, I think you just have to give it some thought, as you say. I
Yeah.
mean, there's and again, when you're constructing teams, you look for people. You don't want everyone to agree with what it. You know, if you're trying to run a team, you don't want everyone to agree with everything that's being done because then you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. It's got to be like you always. I always quite liked having one or two people in the team who were, I suppose, would challenge things a bit more, would question things. So yeah, like the perfectionism thing, you could turn that into, you have a questioning, curious mindset about how it can be made even better. That's kind of what drives perfectionism in a way, isn't it? You're curious to see, right, how do I make it as good as it can possibly be? Um, so yeah, definitely. I mean, the the thing with, like I say, the vision and the purpose and the trademark behaviors is all kind of linked to each other. They all reflect each other to some extent. Because I guess when you're, and some of the examples here about visions, people have talked about, wanting to build something of their own, for example. Well, that, the trademark behaviors there is, looking at things like, okay, I'm a self-starter. I can work independently. I'm driven, ambitious, etc. So, and just figuring out those sort of motivations, and then turn them into the three, like I say, the three key trademark behaviors that really sum up what it is that about you that makes you tick.
No. If anyone has any questions that come to mind, feel free to just put them
Hmm.
in the chat. We can answer them as we go. I guess how we can move on is so once you've kind of done a bit, I guess a bit of self-discovery and actually
Yeah,
taking the time to think about yourself, um,
yeah,
how does the positioning statement work and how would people kind of spend time
yeah.
doing that?
Well, yeah. So the other sort of aspects of the that's quite helpful in the positioning statement, positioning summary framework that we put together. There's things like intended audience, so the people that are most likely to be interested in your skills and knowledge. And we've already talked a bit earlier about, potentially looking, once you've got some of these trademark behaviours and skills defined, you can pop that information in and start to decide, okay, it's these particular businesses that I'm going after, or these sorts of organisations that support startups and so on. The other things is you can summarize it all into, a nice, succinct um, positioning statement that, really explains what it is, that you can help, the challenge or the roles that you can bring your experience to bear on, and the benefits that you can deliver, and why you feel that you're uniquely placed to do that. So, and then just a bit more about that kind of positioning in terms of how your ability to fulfill needs, the specifics of those, those actual benefits, and the reasons why you'd be an outstanding candidate. So there's a summary there which we can, I'll talk about something like a positioning statement, and then value proposition, and the final thing is the skills themselves. So I said you don't want a long list of things, but you know, organization skills, for example, could be one. You would have probably two or three others that you would add for yourself, Holly, um, and everyone would have different ones. And then the key thing about that um, is to, I suppose, give some proof points to it. I call it reasons to believe. So just three of, one or two, three examples of you know, where you've demonstrated those good organisation skills. So obviously you talked about, and it's nice to have those lateral thoughts about, okay, I've organised it, make sure that no one's birthday gets forgotten at home, stuff like that. Um, but there'll be loads of things that you've done probably in your education and so on, and any work that you've done, any work experience that you've managed to get where you've had to show some degree of
Yeah.
organisational skills. Or it might be writing skills. It might be creative, design. It could be any number. I mean, there's literally hundreds of quite specific skills. It could be coding skills. It could be anything. But what you want is about three or four of them at maximum, and then you want the specific benefits that those can bring to a potential employer. That could be something quite functional. It could be skills that bring a more emotional benefit, like you say, or skills that enable you to function well within a team. So yeah, it just those are the elements of the framework.
Hmm.
And then once you've, like I say, once you've got it, it takes, honestly, Polly, well, I think you know because you've given it a go, but most people I speak to sort of look at it and go, well, okay, I'll spend an hour or two doing this. And then they come back to me like a week later and they say, I've spent about 5 hours trying to
Or
fill this in.
I've changed it a
Yeah,
hundred times.
yeah.
Or
And that's the beauty of it, of course, is it does, to your point you made earlier, was, okay, yeah, this will change, as yeah, and you can refresh it, and actually you might have a series of conversations, and you might decide actually that's not the route that I want to go down with those particular intended employers, and okay, no, I'll rule that out, or there's this, it's opened my eyes to other opportunities out there. So it becomes, it's a living, breathing thing. It changes all the time. But as I said, once you've done it, you've got it's a very practical bit of stuff that you've created. You probably put 3 or 4 hours of work into it. Bear in mind, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's
yeah,
never going to be perfect. It just has to be good enough. But it has to be honest. And I think that's the important thing, is you've got to be honest with yourself. You've then got, if you're writing to someone, for example, let's say you're interacting with someone and it's about a role and they're wanting examples of your organizational skills or examples of your ability to do creative things. You've got two or three examples. You can go, okay, yeah, bang, I've got them. You don't have to go rooting around, and you can list them off. You can have other bits of evidence to support them. It
yeah,
just gives you a bit of structure in, the sort of things that might get followed up in questions, or, as I say, if you're reaching out proactively or responding to a job advertisement, then there's information in there that can be used in loads of different ways. And once you've got it, you've got it. Um, and it does also bring a bit of consistency into the way that you respond to things and the way that you talk about yourself. And that's quite important as well, because if you're consistent and you repeat it, it will start to feel like second nature, rather than, if someone asks, okay, what is it about yourself? To explain yourself in like 2 or 3 sentences, and it's like, oh, it's a bit of a challenge. But
mm.
if you've gone to the trouble of constructing what
It's
that
ingrained
description
in your
is,
head. You memorize.
yeah, and you can, yeah, and you can literally, if you use it time and time again, you've written it down several times, when someone asks, you say, oh yeah, okay, this is me, bang, and you can just reel it off, and it
Yeah,
comes out naturally, rather than going, oh, I haven't thought about that. So yeah, it's just a practical thing to have. It's not going to
yeah.
solve everything. It's not going to guarantee you're going to get jobs straight away, but it's a useful
It's
process to
how
go
you
through.
communicate and it's
Hmm.
how you kind of put yourself forward. So if you did a really
Yeah,
she did a really interesting talk yesterday about the confidence trap
yeah,
and
I saw
how,
that. Yeah,
yeah, how HR teams are hiring people who are the most confident in interviews, not like the
yeah,
best person for the job.
yeah, yeah.
And it's how they kind of portray themselves, but that confidence doesn't come naturally. It's only
Yeah.
with kind of time and again, like just taking that time to think, what skills do I have? What I think this would
Mm,
actually be really useful for as well is to kind of do this whilst you're doing like a internship or any work
mm,
experience or
mm,
there's so many things that I've learned at Pollen that probably when my
mm,
time at Pollen might come to an end, I've
mm.
forgotten about it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I forgot that I built a whole platform
Yes.
using AI,
Yeah.
and I'm actually good at AI. There's
Hmm.
certain skills that you might not know that you have
Yeah.
because you've only done it once, you've completely forgotten about. But when you do it again,
Yeah.
it'll be like
Yeah. No, it's,
a bike.
yeah. Keeping a little record of those sort of things, and said that this is a summary framework that once you're compiling the sort of the evidence, I suppose, as it were, so you want the proof points as to show the benefits and the skills that you bring.
Yeah,
Exactly that point. It's remarkable. I think that's one of the other things I say in the framework, especially. actually for people that are using it who've been in work for quite some time, to your point, have quite often gone, actually, yeah, I forgot I did. I am good at this. I did it for 10 years and in this other role. And, actually there's all those things that because you tend to forget, what's happened last month, because you're moving on to the next thing, aren't you? Your brain's just being filled with, okay, well,
Startup
we're
world,
almost,
I feel
we're
like
almost
I've
looking
been at
forward.
pollen for like 10 years.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a nice opportunity to take a little step back and just look back on what you've achieved.
Yeah.
And to do that periodically is a really good thing to do, just to remind yourself of the achievements that you've made and the progress that you've made. I said, it's a really simple framework. It's nothing revolutionary. There's nothing in there that is a silver bullet or anything, but it does give a bit of
It
structure.
gives you that structure, it gives you that time to step away and to do it.
Absolutely. I think
You don't know where to
that's the most
start.
important thing. No, exactly. And that's probably the most important thing out of all of it, is to actually give yourself a bit of time
Mhm.
just to think about what it is that you want to achieve moving forwards, but also just to reflect on all the things that you've already done.
Yeah.
And it really, it doesn't matter whether you're at your end of your career or you're just starting out. There will be loads of things that you've already achieved that are going to be relevant
No.
um, to whatever it is that you want to do next.
Yeah. So everyone who basically our whole community will receive access to the
Yeah,
framework so they can give it a go.
yeah.
Everyone in this call today, I'll make sure that you get it ASAP while it's kind of fresh in your brains. But do you have any, like from your experience of seeing people do it and doing it
Mm.
yourself, do you have any like mistakes that like people you need to avoid doing this? Otherwise, it's not gonna like bring out
Yeah,
what you want.
yeah. And this is a really good discipline to get into. I'll give it to a couple of people and they've come back and I've looked at it and gone, your spreadsheet is, the cells are gigantic. You've got 3 paragraphs in there when I've asked for 2 sentences.
Yeah.
So the trap to fall into, and this is why it's really good. It disciplines you
Mhm.
to choose the right words and to choose them really carefully, because you don't have many to use. So the times when I've had stuff back from people working with people, and like I say, sometimes it's been someone who's quite new into looking for work, looking to get into a career. Other times it's people who've been working for 25 years and they just reel off all this stuff. And I'm like, well, if you reel all that stuff off, I'm going to get bored after the first 30 seconds, to be honest with you, trying to read it. And also, I won't really know what it is that you're saying.
Yeah.
You've got to keep it nice and clear and succinct. So yeah, that's the biggest trap to fall into, is to end up using too many words. It's constructed in a way that, you if you use if you use the spreadsheet as it stands, it should be a handful of words. And that is quite difficult.
Yeah.
That's the thing that takes time, because it's easy just to splurge all down all the things that you might be good at, but
Yeah.
actually going, okay, right, I've got to give it a bit of thought here. What are the skills that I'm actually most relevant to me, or the ones that I feel most passionately about, or feel that I am best at? And how do I explain the benefits of those skills, and also how do I explain um, or describe the sort of the evidence or the reasons to believe for people in just a few words. So that's what makes it tricky. That's why it takes longer than people realize. And that's the biggest trap that people fall into, is they end up writing loads of stuff.
Yeah, it's the same with even interviews and applications.
Yeah.
Done it before when you have the so tell me about yourself question.
Mm.
Sometimes it like I think people are so used to having to like really prove themselves. So they're
Mm.
just like, I'm just gonna word vomit all of the things
Yes.
I've done
Yeah.
in my life. That might not even be relevant to the role because I want to prove that I can do this.
Yeah.
It gets to a point where you're like, whoa, like
Yeah.
if you focused on one thing that was really relevant to that role and kind of went
Yes.
into a bit more,
100.
be a lot
Yeah.
more successful than
Yeah. Yeah.
telling us everything that you've done
Yeah.
since you were like 16.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, if you ask that question, it's like, well, I'm a fascinating person and I've got loads to talk about, but in the context of these, and there's loads to me that we won't cover, but in the context of this conversation, there are 2 or 3 things that are, the most relevant, or like you say, there might be one specific bullseye where you go, actually, the most important thing that you need to know about me in the context of this role is, and then when you go, yeah, and then
Yeah.
it's difficult because, if we're asked to talk about ourselves, there's a lot. We know ourselves quite well, generally speaking. Um, Certainly think we do, and we could talk for hours. I mean, all of us could talk for hours about what it is about our lives and so on. But getting it down to a nice, like you say, relevant and succinct answer
Yeah.
is really important. And again, hopefully, the framework helps with that, some of that.
Yeah, it's one of the
Yeah.
most important parts because that's the first insight somebody gets to as a person.
Mm.
And it's really important to kind of show your key skills across. And although
Yeah.
you don't require experience for everything, like we've
Yeah.
spoken about, there's relevant skills that you could apply elsewhere. And what I find myself always doing is they'll just keep like reeling off about like education experience and not really give
Mm.
much detail to how that kind of what behavior that kind of brings out
Mm.
them as a person and how they can apply it to different things. So
Mm.
I feel like
Yeah.
I've learned basically things about you that are almost on a level that's not deep to you as a person.
Mm.
And I always end up asking the question, so what about you? Like tell me more about
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what about like your spare time or I'll like if
Yes.
they mention a project, I'll go, that sounds really cool. Can
Mm.
you tell me more
Yeah.
about that? And then
Yeah.
they'll bring out more about, oh, I was the head of the web design, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, so they're actually really analytically minded.
Yeah. No, exactly right. And I've seen recently. Now, there's a chap who's taken over leadership of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, and he's like a breath of fresh air when he's interviewed because he doesn't respond like most politicians do. He gives very clear answers, and honest answers. In my view, he's talking from his heart. But also, if you it's worth observing some of his interviews because he answers questions. He doesn't waffle,
Mhm.
so he will answer questions quite succinctly and clearly, and that's really what you want in an interview. And it's amazing actually just seeing so many interviewers now saying, "What a great guy to interview," because he actually answers the question. He's really clear, um, and that's a really important skill to develop for that interview process. And if you're prepared for those interviews and you know he it's all there, he knows exactly what he wants to say on each topic.
Yeah,
If you think about the questions you're likely to get into an interview and having succinct answers prepared that you've got contained in a framework, so that if someone said, "Okay, what are your skills then?" You can say, "Actually, the three key ones are boom, boom, boom,"
yeah.
and explain a bit about each.
That's what
Okay,
I really like about the
yeah,
framework is that
mm,
if like I know some people do it, like when you're having an interview, if you have something on the screen, it's like the
yeah,
one thing that you can have on the screen because you can apply it to so many different questions.
mm,
You
yeah,
think, okay, so they've just asked me like how I find working in a team. Okay, wait, okay, that
yeah,
shows that I can work in a team. Or
yes,
what's like a hard challenge? Okay, that shows that I can do that.
yeah,
So not only does it help you prepare and take that step back, you can almost just use it as a like just put your brain on a screen for a bit because
yeah, yeah,
an interview's scary and sometimes your mind goes
yeah,
blank and
yeah,
even though you're talking literally about yourself, sometimes you forget what you've done.
exactly right.
So
So yeah, um, yeah. So I think that's really, it gives a framework,
yeah,
does what it says on the tin. It's a framework. But it structures. It helps you structure thinking and structure your preparation, and ultimately structure some of the answers that you give, whether those are written or whether they're verbal in an interview. So
no.
hopefully, it'll be useful for people. Hope so.
Thank you. I'm sure it will be. So everybody will have access to do it. And like I mentioned at the beginning, Paul is actually a mentor. So if you
Yeah,
want to reach out to him, message him, let him know that you've done it. Probably be nice to see people actually do the framework and see what they've done or gather
yeah.
from
No,
themselves.
that would be fantastic. So it'd be
Um,
lovely to know that it's
so that
useful.
the work gets done. But yeah, thank you so much for joining
No,
us,
my
Paul.
pleasure.
And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to give Paul a message or give me a message. Um,
Yeah,
we've actually launched our next masterclass in December. It'll be on December 2nd. So straight after this, I'll send you a email with the framework and a link to the next masterclass.
brilliant.
But yeah, we've run over a teeny bit, but I
Yeah,
think we did it
covered it
quite well. This is
pretty
good.
well. Yeah, I think we covered everything we need to.
Covered everything.
Fantastic.
But thank you everyone
Thank you.
for joining and thank you
Thank you, everyone, for taking time.
for,
Yeah,
for
appreciate it.
coming. And I'm sure we'll all be doing a lot of self-discovery tonight.
No, let's hope so. And Holly, thank you for all of your
Oh,
Just
thank
for everyone
you.
listening, like the preparation for this was just a dream because Holly just said, right, this is what we're going to do. Bum, 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 bum. So
Just
yes,
join.
just yeah, good stuff. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much,
Paul. And
guys.
thank
Thanks.
you. The
Yeah. Bye.
recording of this will be available soon as well.
Lovely.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.